Hello, everyone. Good evening. We welcome you all to the second episode of Know Your NEP. NEP, National Education Policy. We are going to decode it from a different perspective today. For the decoding, we have today Mr. Pranay. Mr. Pranay is a founder and managing director of IQ. Pranay also serves as General Secretary BJP Education Cell Pune, Territory Head Early Childhood Association of India, PCMC, Pune District Chapter, Association Member, Association for Primary Education and Research. Maharashtra State Coordinator, Charles Walter Society for Innovation and Research, Lifetime Code Advisor for the WTA, that is World Teachers Association. Pranay has also worked in the ecosystem for True Fortune 500 companies. One is Manpower Incorporated and WNS Global. Pranay has also worked with Times of India Group, Benetton Coleman Company and Private Limited, and served as a president of AIECEC, that is the world's largest student-run organization. Recognized for his contribution, he has been awarded as National Top Performer Award All India and the Highest Revenue Generator Award All India and the Best Team All India by Times of Group India. So let me introduce you to our today's moderator, Mr. Pranay.
Thank
Hello,
you.
Pranay.
Thank you so much, Romal. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. The stage is yours. And today we have a very special guest audience. And she's the one that we're looking forward for. So I'll not waste the time. All the honors for the Pranay to do it.
Sure. Can we please have a special guest on screen? And while I speak about her, let our viewers also know who this amazing person is with us today.
Namaskar.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much for joining us today. Honorable dignitaries, principal, teachers, parents, respected politicians, institution owners, and my dear fellow educators. Namaskar and welcome to the second session of NEP. That's the National Education Policy 2020, presented by the Bhartiya Janata Party Education Cell. I welcome you all on behalf of the entire BJP Education Cell Pune district and all of us from its core member team. Before we begin our today's conversation on NEP 2020, I take immense pleasure in introducing you to a very special guest with us who has joined us and who has been really kind to give her time today. Someone who barely needs any introduction. Someone who is absolutely modest about all her accomplishments and says she doesn't relish long introductions. However, I will not leave this opportunity to share her immense contribution with all our viewers watching us today. One of the most respected figures in the education circles around the equator, with over 33 years of incredible experience, a doctorate of philosophy in education from École Supérieure Robert de Sorbonne, Paris, conferred with the Fellowship of Honor from New Zealand Tertiary College, started a professional journey right from the ground level as a teacher, worked with schools like Hasnath High School, Arya Vidya Mandir, and Jamnabai Narsi, and then started her own consultancy firm, Tasha, that primarily focused on teacher and student help activities. Let me tell you, she's the founder education consultant for the EuroKids project that helped set up their first 100 schools. Yes, first 100 schools. Erstwhile education consultant to Tata Sky Channel for their active WizKids television learning project and helped develop developmentally appropriate television content for 3 to 6 years. The keyword here is developmentally appropriate television content. She then moved to Podar in the year 2000 and she is, here till date, the president of the Podar Education Network, which has over 496 centers. Is this believable or this is unbelievable? Yes, over 496 centers in India and UAE and over 115 teacher training institutes. Isn't this incredible, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, she's the founder director of Podar Preschool. She's the founder director of the Daycare Center. She's the founder director for the ECE teacher training chain, the Podar Jumbo Kids and the Podar Institute of Education. She heads the teacher training wing of the organization and is a lead assurer for the CASH, which is the United Kingdom Teacher Training Program, which they have with them. She's also the nursery director for UAE project Little Wonders Nursery that has branches in Jumeirah and Sharjah, popular for coining the term kiducation. Yes, kiducation. She's also one of the most active bloggers on the education concerning hot topics and boldly writes for leading publication houses worldwide. She has trained teachers in India, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi, and also has presented conferences in Canada, Nebraska, Belfast, Malaysia, Macau, London, New Zealand, Dubai, Germany, and Italy. Isn't this amazing, ladies and gentlemen? She has authored almost just 1 or 2 books away from touching a 2 dozen books. But to name a few, she has authored books like Mr. Pencil and Friends, How to Teach So Kids Can Learn, and How to Teach So Kids Can Learn with Education. The third book was Are You Unknowingly Harming Your Child? The fourth book, How to Be a Super Mom, something which I personally like. The fifth book, Super Dads Are Born Smart. The sixth one, Play is the Work of Childhood. The seventh one, Yippies, Why Does Zelda Need Stripes? Eighth one, Lapu and the Magic of Pani. The ninth one, Growing Up with Mahatma Gandhi. The 10th one, Why Did Humpty Dumpty and Jack and Jill Fall Down? The 11th one, The Tiger, the Sparrow and the Bee. The 12th one, Little Pigs Save the Earth. The 13th one, Red Riding Hood and the Wolves That Liked Healthy Food. The 14th one, Goldilocks and the Three Magic Words. The 15th one, Hansel and Gretel, the Kind Old Lady. The 16th one, The Secret Touch. The 17th touch, When Touch Becomes Trouble. The 18th one, The New Normal. Her recent books, Yash and Yashika, Learn About Coding, and the 20th book, Code and Cody, Love to Code, are also the talk of the town. In fact, no, they are the talk of the nation actually. Most celebrated of all her books, her book that is closest to her soul, which we all know this dearly, Once Upon a Story, which is also co-authored by her and a very good colleague of hers, Vinita, on India's forgotten but revolutionary education, Gijubhai Badeka, published by Crossford. This is a must-read book for every single educator. We will talk about this as well shortly. She has represented Asia at the Nature Action Collaborative for Children at the United States. She has represented India at the global stage of World Forum in Early Childhood Education, United States. She's the member of the International Organizing Committee of World Forum Foundation, someone who has a beautiful ardent collection of Sri Ganeshji idols all over her office in every single size and color. I think it will soon be announced in the Guinness record for the highest Ganpati idol in an office. Now I know the clandestine island of wisdom where it all comes from, an island of sheer brilliance. A very highly dignified professional, an avant-garde educator, a passionate child educationist, a passionate child activist, a teacher at core, an extraordinary storyteller, a parenting pundit, a brazen supporter of other fellow educators, a distinguished author of so many books that we just heard, a complete institution in herself, one who reads and also replies to every single message personally, and above all, a very good human being with enormous empathy. She also is also envied by many other veteran educators for the way she is loved overwhelmingly. She who is revered by umpteen and a role model for educators across all age groups. Personally, I love addressing her as my general. She is the founder president and the soul of India's pride, the Early Childhood Association of India, that is the ECA. She's also the founder president of APER, that is the Association of Primary Education and Research, the president of the Podar Education Network. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you your guest for the day, Dr. Swati Popat Vats. Welcome, General.
Namaskar. And Pranay, if I was on a stage with you, I would have taken away that mic long back because I don't like introductions. But I must say, you have done your research. It's impeccable. I don't know how did you get half the facts, but your research is impeccable, really.
Thank you very much. And you are beyond amazing. Do you also know that?
That's
Thank you very much. With your prior permission, General, may I please address you during this session, Dr. Watts, during the entire session today?
absolutely. Please feel free to address me however you want.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any opening remarks from you, Dr. Watts?
I'm just so happy that Pranay, you have joined the BJP cell as the General Secretary for Education, because we need young, dynamic, dedicated people like you to take education to its zenith in this country. So, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, yes, so my first question to all of you before we begin today's session. So, I request all our viewers to please pen it down in the comment section today. How many of you are under the age group of 35 years? If you could please pen it down. I could see some comments coming in. Okay, so let me tell you, all those who are under 35 years of age, you comprise over 65% of India's population. My next question to all of you, and I would really be happy to read all those comments. How many of you are under 25 years of age watching this session today? Okay, okay. Yes. So do you know something about this? You all comprise over 50% of India's population. Yes, that is 50% of India's population. Our viewers seem pretty representative of our country today. That sounds very interesting as well. So let me also share something with you all today. The average median age of a person from Japan is 48 years. The average median age from China is 37 years. European nations, it's 43 years. The average age of a UK person is 40 years. The average age of a Japanese is 40. Of a Russian is 39 years. The average age of an American is 39 years. At the same time, the average median age of an Indian is 26.8 years. Isn't this really amazing? Isn't that that also the reason that we are also amongst the youngest nations on earth? However, there is another country, which is Niger in Africa, which is also at its medium age of around 15. However, it cannot be compared with India on any grounds because of so many factors. Now comes the big question of talking about the national education policy. However, this is a beautiful vision document, and we have been coming across, and we have been attending, we have been moderating, we have been attending and also watching it across various shows, across various platforms. But before we talk about our NEP, let us also take a bit to understand where have we come from and where have we come till date. And most importantly, also understand the overall demographics of our country with regards to our facts. We have over 135 crore people with over 750 districts, with over 4,000 cities and towns and villages, with over 6.4 lakh villages, with over 2 lakh 50,000 gram panchayats, with over 28 states and 8 union territories. Year 1947, our literacy rate was 16% for men and 9% for women. At the same time, year 2020, we have come way too far from this point. So it has come down to 70% for men and 64% for women, respectively. We have over 15 lakh registered schools in India, over 30 crore students in India, over 80 lakh teachers in India, over 14 lakh Anganwadis in India. We have over 1 lakh 8,017 single teacher schools, majority of them, which is around 85,743 schools, being primary schools alone, serving grades 1 to 5. Does that not worry all of us? However, the good news here is from 26 universities in the year 1947, we have come to over 993 universities in 2021. From 700 universities in the year 1947, we have come to over 39,000 colleges in present India. Mind you, we have over 11,000 standalone universities in India. From 4 lakh students in higher education in the year 1947, we have over 3.74 crore students pursuing exclusively higher education in our country. The previous NEPs have always shown the commitment of assuring almost 4% of its GDP to it. However, all our NEPs put together, we have never utilized over 6%, over 4% of our GDP, sorry. Technically, which is around 8.7 lakh crores, out of 146 lakh crores, 8.7 lakhs crore has been the commitment from the current government to be utilized for the current NEP. Having said that, let's move to our very first question and also understand our demographics from a very own veteran and somebody who understands and also been one of the biggest contributor to India's education system. So my first question to you, Dr. Vats, is we have come a long way from the year 1986. wherein the first policy was actually into play. What is your analysis of the new NEP 2020, especially focusing on the early years and our younger citizens? Dr. Swati Popat Vats.
So, Pranay, I think this policy is laudable for a lot of things. Number one, it is after almost 36 years that this country has revived its national education policy. It goes to show that now education has become the number one agenda for this country. Because when you review a policy, when you revive a policy, it shows where the focus is now going to be. So that is one of the reasons why it has to be celebrated, that which means that education is going to be the focal point now of the government. Number two, this policy moves from M to M. It's moving from Macaulay to Mahatma Gandhi's basic education tenets, which he had put in Nai Talim. One of the first basic education documents was done by Mahatma Gandhi. And not many people know that after coming out with basic education, he reworked and came out with pre-basic education also, because he realized that early years was missing. And for so many years, we have still followed Macaulay. We want our children to rote learn. We don't want to move away from the idea of the classrooms that the British left us with. This policy shows us the way for actually making children understand how to learn rather than what to learn. And it's giving so much of freedom to schools and educators to rework and rethink what education means for them. There is so much of choice, there is so much of deviation that you don't need to follow these subjects. There's so much of focus on skill education, life skills. Very importantly, I think this policy is going to start a whole new chapter, which is going to help India become the leader when it comes to education. And I say this because many countries like Finland, etc., come out higher on the PISA score. But those countries don't struggle with the problems that we have of poverty or malnutrition or lack of educational facilities. And we, in spite of all this, if we follow this policy, we can become world leaders when it comes to educating our children. And about early childhood education, this is the first time that it's now official that education starts at age 3. And the policy has given it very clearly that 85% of the cumulative brain development happens in the first 6 years. So now there should be no doubt in the minds of parents or other educators about the importance of the early years. I mean, whenever the ASER report used to come out, people used to lament that our third standard children can't even read kindergarten books, etc., etc. And I always used to say that because we are not starting education from 3 years onwards, we are missing out that huge chunk of brain development. We are starting from grade 1. The time when the child's brain is developing, when they are supposed to learn how to learn, that period we are completely ignoring. No wonder our ASER reports were so bad. So it's going to be an overall change maker of a policy.
True. I'm also very happy what you really mentioned about from M to M, Macaulay to Mahatma Gandhi, and especially Nai Talim and pre-basic education as well. What I'm also happy to know is that the new education policy is also talking about Kadambari. It is also talking about Bhanbhat and Bhushan Bhatt's Chausasti Kala. It is also talking about the 14 different types of Vidyas and the 64 different types of arts, which every man should know in this lifetime. So what really amazes me, which Krishna Bhagwan and along with his elder brother, Balram, when they went to Acharya Rishi Sandipani at their ashram, they learned these kalas in precisely 64 days. At the same time, on an average, the other person at that age took over 2.5 years. If we talk about modern day, it takes almost one entire lifetime to even master one art form. So yes, I think Kadambari is mentioned, Bhanbhat and Bhushan Bhatt's work is really mentioned, and I think we should be extremely proud about the fact. And yes, moving back towards the next question. The new National Curriculum Framework for Early Childhood Care and Education, which is the NCP EFECCE, for children up to 8 years of age is under development. What is your view? What, in your view, particularly, are the most important areas that should be incorporated in the National Curriculum Framework for ensuring the holistic development of a child?
See, most importantly, we cannot ignore global research when it comes to the foundational years. And one of the most important research is of James Heckman, the James Heckman policy, which says that we are focusing too much on cognitive development too early. We should focus on socio-emotional learning. And I think this policy has outlined that the early years should be focusing less on traditional methods of reading, writing, and number work, and more on building the other skills required for lifelong learning. So, SEL learning, which is socio emotional learning, is something that the NCRT should focus on when it is developing this curriculum. And most importantly, uh, I love the term foundational numeracy and literacy. You know, they could have called it numeracy and literacy, but they chose to call it foundational numeracy and literacy, which means they want the mindset to change from the traditional structured way in which we teach children to do numbers or to read and write, and move towards writing readiness, reading readiness, number readiness. Because without the foundation, children in the older grades will not be able to function, to be able to think, to be able to use that knowledge. Most importantly, I feel NCRT also needs to focus on teacher education, because you may come out with the best curriculum, but if you don't support it with teacher development and teacher training modules, then the ultimate person who's going to implement it in your schools, in your Anganwadis, is going to be that teacher. And one of the things that we is very weak in our ICDS system is teacher education. So it is very, very important that NCRT must supplement the curriculum with proper teacher training modules. Otherwise, even if they come out with the best of curriculum, the implementation would suffer.
I totally agree on your emphasis on the teacher training budgets, which you really mentioned. And I still remember fondly when we were all in Bangalore, 26th of September 2019, for the International Didactic Association and also for the International ECA conference, wherein we did mention and we did have a couple of panel discussions on this. So until 2019, the teacher training budgets were approximately around 11,000 crores. These were the proposed budgets. However, only 120 crores were utilized out of it. So that is the irony. That is the irony. Yes. Moving forward, you have done phenomenal amount of work in Anganwadis and Balwadis. If you are an Anganwadi worker, what are the methods you will employ for teacher and learning in the 1-year preparatory class for 5 and 6-year-olds in the Anganwadis?
A very, very valid question, because transition or Bal Vatikas is what is very important to understand, that presently our Anganwadis were under the Women and Child Development Ministry. And then from grade 1 onwards, they used to come under the HR ministry, which is now the MOE, which is the Ministry of Education. It is this transition from Anganwadis to a proper grade 1 school, which is now being clubbed as the foundation years. And this transition is going to matter the most, because when a child transits from an Anganwadi, which is a very secure, caring environment, play-based, and then goes into a grade 1, where the playway disappears, and the focus becomes suddenly, about nobody's bothered about relationships. They're only bothered about performance. And that's where the main problem starts. So I feel where the transition is concerned, both should be trained. The Anganwadi workers and the grade 1 or the class 1 teachers of the school where these children are going to transit to, both have to be trained into understanding, A, what are the things that will change for this child, and B, what has this child come from so that I know where to now start with the child and take the child to the next step. I think this bridge was missing till now, which this NEP is trying to bridge with this transitory phase. And that is why it's going to become very important for teachers to understand and parents to understand that it can only happen with three people having a good relationship, which is your teacher child, your teacher parent, and your parent child. So it is very important for both the Anganwadi Sevikas and the grade 1 teachers to understand that we will have to work together if we want the children to thrive coming from one environment into the other. Otherwise, they will just keep on trying to teach, and always feel that children are not learning, because your focus is absolutely wrong. It is said that we have two parts of the brain, and if the emotional brain is not satisfied, it does not allow your thinking brain to learn. And that is the most important thing that we will have to take care of in this transition process, that children's emotions are nurtured, taken care of, so that they can move on to learning.
Very well said, very well said, especially the teacher child, the parent, and the parent child angle to the entire conversation. So I'll also talk about one more interesting thing now that you mentioned about incorporating learning and bringing all of them under a very common environment and bringing them in this ecosystem. So, ladies and gentlemen, all watching this conversation today. So, 2020, it was February, and under the able leadership of Dr. Swati Popat Vats, this was again initiated by the PCMC and Pune chapter of the ECA for the very first time in India. It was the original thought by Mr. Lucky Surana, wherein he had come up with the concept of the India's first Teachers Tinkering Fest. So yes, all the teachers from Anganwadis and Balwadis and private schools and public schools, they had come together. They were there together for 2 good days from morning to evening. And the amount of learning, the amount of exchange of ideas, the amount of information sharing, the amount of knowledge transfer that happened during those 2 days, we were simply amazed to see that. Because sometimes we often underestimate them, that they don't know much about the new age practices. However, things that they know, we cannot even think about it. So yes, I think we should do many more teachers tinkering activities like this, not just at association level. I think these should be now propagated towards government levels as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they can be done online also, Pranay. I would suggest you all should take this up, that, we need to keep on training these teachers. Because let me tell you, I have seen in affluent private schools, a teacher is not able to talk to parents whose first language is not English. Whereas in an Anganwadi, I have seen teachers able to talk to parents in multiple languages. So it's very important to understand language should not be a barrier when it comes to parent education, because parent is that third pillar that we need in a child's education.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very well said. Very well said. In fact, most of the time a child actually spends with his parent. There is so much of shadow learning and so much of visual learning which he actually does. So, which Howard Gardner also is talking about, the visual learning and the kinesthetic and the auditory learning, the three learning styles. So yes, there is a lot to do over there as well. So yes, moving forward, what are your ideas? If you could share 2 or 3 suggestions from your 3 decades of experience about what teaching methodologies we could adopt to ensure that foundation, literacy, and numeracy is achieved in the right way.
It's very important for us to understand that we already had pioneers in our country. We have global pioneers also. For example, where the word kindergarten started from, Frederick Frobel. He talked about helping children learn from the environment with their hands. Okay. And one of the most important things he did in his system was he ensured that all the activities were such that children would use both their hands, ambidextrous. If you see our present education system, we tend to make the child use only their writing hand for everything. And if you see the professions that children will then go into, most of the professions will require them to use both their hands. So this is what, again, the NEP says, that, your education must prepare you for your profession. That's exactly what Mahatma Gandhi said, skill development. We are not here to teach children what textbooks are or how many books to fill in with their writing. It is all about the skills that I will require to live life and to earn my living. So it's very important that when we look around the world, we have to learn from these pioneers like Froebel, from Montessori, from Vygotsky, who talks about assessment. In India, I would say Mahatma Gandhi also talked what Rudolf Steiner spoke about: head, heart, and hand. When we involve the head, that means make children think rather than questioning children all the time. Hand, which means again, use their hands to learn. We coop them up in classrooms and we make them look at a blackboard. Over a period of time, it's the color of that blackboard only that has changed. It's gone from black to white to green, but we are still making them stare at a wall rather than use their hands. And heart means the value system, the empathy that we want children to grow up with. When these three are combined, you get one of the best learning systems in the world. Now, in India, we have Krishnamurti, we have Rabindranath Tagore. Why don't we make a combination and adapt the best from all their methods? Look at Gijubai. Gijubai spoke about stories. When I was developing the early years curriculum for the Maharashtra International Education Board, we used stories as the curriculum starting point. Because if you see, we have such beautiful multilingual storybooks available in our country. And if you make stories the starting point of your education, it engrosses children. And that's what Gijubai Badeka did in his Divya Swapna. So I would say head, heart, and hand, where it takes care of your socio emotional and physical development, which is the starting point of all your learning. And number two, most importantly, hands on learning. The hand and the eye always require each other to work together for brain development. And stories, which means when you tell me a story, my head is involved, my heart is involved. And when you make me do activities connected to the story, my hands are also involved. So it's very, very important that, rather than go into big, big words, we talk about 9 intelligences and we talk about so many things. We have to come back to the basics. Let's go to the basics. Then give it whatever name you want. You call it MI, you call it STEAM, you call it STEM. Come to the basics with your head, the heart, and the hand.
Very well said, very well. In fact, the names that you mentioned, particularly Frederick Froebel, Maria Montessori, Vygotsky, Dolsteiner, and also Piaget. In fact, I think we should also look back at our own heroes, starting from Rabindranath Tagore, starting from
Yes.
Tarabai Modar, Anutai Wagh, and in fact, Mahatma Gandhi himself. In fact, one person whom we will talk about shortly is also Gijubai Videka. So yes, I think we cannot tax him for not being an international resident of the world. Rather, in fact, I think he should. In fact, we are all fighting one day. He should get his Padma Shri as well.
Oh, please.
Great. Another thing, moving forward, how can we incorporate critical thinking in classrooms while teaching them regular subjects and concepts?
The sad part about our classrooms, both Anganwadis and private schools, is we rarely allow children to question. It's considered bad manners in our schools. We only want to pump knowledge into them, and then we want to take back that knowledge by testing them. So we are the ones interrogating them all the time. What color is this? What is this number? We rarely allow children to ask questions. And if when you do that, you will see children using critical thinking. For example, a child asked me, why don't dogs have horns? So I said, yes, that's a very good question. Let's talk about it. Why do you think dogs don't have horns? So they came out with their own answers in the classrooms that cows need horns to protect themselves. So then how does a dog protect itself? A dog has sharp teeth. You see how it happens? I think if parents and teachers start having these kind of conversations in classrooms, rather than asking what color is the sky, ask children, why is the sky blue in color? Look at the way they will try to think about the different answers. Estimation is another thing that develops critical thinking skills. You must, when you are doing your sand play, water play, let them estimate how much time do you think is left. How many jumps do you think you can cover this distance with? It's these kind of thinking activities that will develop critical thinking skills in children. It's time we stop creating robots. We need to create humans first, and that can only happen when we allow them to question, b ask them thinking questions and not interrogative questions. What's an interrogative question? The interrogative question is, what did you do in school today? A thinking question is, what did you enjoy doing in school today? Both the answers would be very different. One would make the child think, and one would make the child walk away from you. So it is very, very important that I could give you a lot of gyan about critical thinking. Critical thinking is nothing but metacognition, which means thinking about thinking. But let's get back to the basics. And the basics are, please let children think, and please let children question you using their thinking. That's the best way to develop critical thinking skills in children.
True. Very well said. In fact, I also remember you also mentioning this at the New Zealand continent along with many other dignitaries over there in Mumbai, wherein I think critical thinking and inquisitiveness and also curiosity is equally important. I think if I'm right and if I have taken the mental note correct, so you also mentioned about pedagogy, andragogy, and utagogy,
And
which is
Absolutely.
which is, I think, more than children. I think we should also start asking questions because we have accepted as a part of our belief systems. We are not
Yes.
questioning things. If a dog is running behind a car, we are not asking why is it running. We are just saying, look at the dog that's running. If a lizard is actually separating itself from its tail, we aren't
Yes.
really questioning. Yes, these are beautiful things. I think if we can have these discussions openly with our own fellow educators, I think change will definitely happen.
Absolutely. And that's why, Pranay, the whole idea of starting with stories. When you tell a child a story from a book, you can ask them questions and they can ask you questions about the character. That why do you think the lion was like that? Or why do you think if you were the mouse, what would you do? These are things where you are making them put themselves into situations and think. So when we don't give them opportunities for thinking, how can critical thinking come in then?
True, true. Very well said. Very well said. Is there a technical problem now?
Yes, I think there's a network issue. She has left. She'll join in
Sure.
a few minutes.
No problem. Thank you for chiming in, Romal. I think there's a small technical issue. In the meantime, if you all have any questions for our speaker, if you all have any concerns regarding the new NEP, please feel free to write it in the comment section. We will be very happy to take it at the end of the session. Is everything all right, ma'am?
Yes, yes. I got disconnected, so I came back.
Superb, superb. No problem at all. No problem at all. So yes, thank you very much for definitely mentioning those points. And I think critical thinking, asking questions, being curious, and having this tendency of building that curiosity and inquisitiveness from a very early age is the one of the most important points for developing critical thinking in our youngest citizens. My next question to you is, Dr. Watts, how can we incorporate values and ethics in the learning process in a classroom? We often talk about technical things, we often talk about curriculum, but don't you think somewhere, if you ask me personally, if somebody is questioning me today, what was your favorite subject? Somebody would say mathematics, somebody would say English. But till day, I take utmost pride in saying that value education was my favorite subject. So yes, how can we incorporate values and ethics in the learning process right from the young age?
We have a wealth of stories in our country, Panchatantra. What
Yes.
is the Panchatantra? The Panchatantra is Vishnu Sarma, and the stories that he told, the five princes who were absolutely untamable, and nobody was able to educate them. And he taught them everything that they needed to know to become good kings or good administrators through stories. And I think that is what value education should be about. Values are not done through worksheets. Values cannot be done through a workbook. Then you are cramming me with something which I don't like or I may like. But values are something that you learn, A, by imitating people around you, or B, you pick up from the stories that you are told. Ethics again is a very important question. I feel there should be a subject introduced in both ECC Ed and BEd, which is called ethics in education. Most countries have it, we don't. I'll give you a simple example. We have a teacher training college. Last year, we had to go online because physical classrooms were not possible. We recently did a Viva test for them. And Viva is where we have them face to face and we ask them questions, and it's like a conversation. The questions were shared with the different centers, and one of the students leaked it out to the others. And my center heads told me, ma'am, I think we should take them out of the course, we should cut their marks, etc. And I said, no, this is an opportunity to talk to them about ethics. That if a teacher cheats, if a teacher has no ethics, what is she going to teach the children? We get so obsessed with marks, we get so obsessed with being right, even in our teacher training colleges, that we forget about ethics. And that's what this rat race leads to. And that's why it's very important for us to not put our children into this rat race that will make them feel that winning is more important rather than my ethics. I feel the only race that children should be in is the human race. And when
Mhm.
we do that, then ethics and values automatically come in. I think as teachers, it's our job not only to teach ethics and values to children, we also needed to teach it to two other people, to ourselves, number one, and to the parents whom we come in contact with. Because sometimes parents also don't have certain values. They cheat, they lie, they fight, they argue in front of children, they badmouth in front of children. uh, these are not the values that you want your child to grow up with. I mean, when a person is driving a car or a scooter, if the person is going to break a signal just because you are in a hurry, where did your value system go? So we must not have excuses for the kind of things we do as adults. And I think teachers need to realize that they play a much larger role than just teaching children. Teachers bring up generations. The next prime minister or president could be in your class today. So it's very, very important that A, your value system needs to be the highest, and B, your ethics need to be the highest. I'll give you an example, Pranay. In my schools, we are not allowed junk food. That's a rule that I have made from the beginning. That
Mhm.
we know that junk food has additives that damage the growing neurons in children's brain. So junk food is not allowed. Even teachers are not allowed to bring junk food, even if they are having their own private celebration. No junk food, which means no soft drinks, no wafers, kurkure, all this not allowed. Cakes are also not allowed. So I was in a restaurant once with my husband, and I was drinking Coca-Cola, and a 3-year-old toddler toddles up to my table and points at me and says, Popat, because they know my name is Popat. And then points at the Coca Cola and just stands there and looks at me. And it was such a revelation for me that look at what I'm doing. I am telling these children not to have soft drinks, and I'm having them thinking that I'm out of the school so I can have them. Is that a value? And that toddler taught me that after that, for the last 19 years, you won't catch me having soft drinks, neither in public nor in private. So it's very, very important for us to understand if we are telling children something, we should be doing it ourselves first. So values are not taught by worksheets, they're taught by imitation and they're taught through stories.
Very well said. Very well said. I think we all should walk our talks if we really need to inspire the next youngest citizens of our country. In fact, there are MBA colleges, in fact, not in India, but abroad, especially Wharton. In fact, also schools like Edith Cowan Universities in Australia, in Perth. They have incorporated subjects from the Bhagavad Gita. They are talking
Yeah.
about Mahabharata. They're talking about Chandragupta Maurya. They're talking about Chanakya. They're talking
Chanakya,
about
yes.
Krishnanidhi, absolutely. So I remember our professor back in the year 2009, 2011, when I pursued my MBA. So my professor was a Muslim fellow. In fact, he was the former head of Britannica Encyclopedia, and he was the dean of our college. So he said, all those people, if you're really keen on, and if you are really keen in reading the Bhagavad Gita, trust me, you all can skip the strategy classes.
Lovely.
So yes, I think we should adopt because our Indian mythology, in fact, the Indian knowledge systems. That's my next question, bringing to you. How can a teacher, because the NEP is also talking about the Indian knowledge systems, how can a teacher incorporate knowledge of India and also a sense of pride and belonging to a great nation in the teacher learning process? I repeat, it's the teacher learning process and not the teacher training
Teaching.
process.
Yeah,
Yes.
teacher learning process. It's very important for a teacher to understand that she doesn't belong to any religion. The minute you become a teacher, you belong to every religion. And it's sad that in our country, when we talk about yoga, instead of taking it as a national wealth, we teach many people that it belongs to the Hindus. And so you must not partake in it, you know. It's very, very important that these are actually जो धरोहर कहते हैं ना, वो हमारे देश की धरोहर है. They are not religion specific. It's very, very important that teachers need to understand that there is something in our country and in its culture that is religionless. And that is something that we need to accept and adopt in our classrooms without bias. And the minute we remove the bias for our cultural practices, automatically you will understand their importance and you will be able to bring them in your own education. Because it's very important that today the world talks about mindfulness, and
Yes.
we will go for many. I've seen many people saying, "मैंने तो Harvard का course किया है mindfulness." Mindfulness as a term originated in India.
Absolutely.
Mindfulness is what yoga is all about, what samadhi is all about. In fact, if you will study the latest physics research, it says that the sound of the universe is Om.
Oh,
So
oh.
it is not about a religion, you know. So if scientists are able to look at things scientifically, it is important for teachers to have scientific thinking and move away from religion. I was fortunate enough to work with all three religions. I worked in Hasnat, as you said in my introduction. So I knew all the Muslim prayers. I read, my father was very interested in religion. And so
Mhm.
I have read bits and parts of the Quran. My husband has written Sarfarosh, so he did a lot of research about Muslims, etc., to understand and bring forth in the film the good points about why each religion has good points. I worked with Christians, so I have gone through the Bible, I've read the Gita, I've read the Mahabharata. It's very important for us to understand that if you want yourself to grow into Indian values, they are Indian values. They are not Hindu values or Muslim values or Christian values or Sikh values. You know, many people don't know that before there were human rights in the world, it was the Sikh Guru who first came out with this entire philosophy. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be able to practice our religions because he didn't bow down to Aurangzeb. So it is
Mhm.
very important for us to understand that when we look at our dharohar as Indianness, it's very important, then our culture will progress and we will progress with it. Britishers left us with a legacy called divide and rule, and we've never forgotten it ever since. It's very important to understand the flavor of a cake. It's important to look at the whole and enjoy it before a piece is served to you. And that is what Indian culture is all about. First, enjoy it as a whole before you try to relish the pieces called the different religions. So I think that's what we need to bring in our education system also.
True, true. Very well said. In fact, when you mentioned about the divide and rule policy, if we talk about the year 1968, right, wherein Dr. Daulat Singh Kothari, when he drafted the very first education policy of our nation, right? So we often say that our education is often the 10 plus 2 and everything. So we have been adopted and completely inspired by the Commonwealth nations. In fact, it's very important for all our viewers to also know an interesting fact over here now. So the reason why we have also been following the British education system is because Daulat Singh Kothari primarily, okay, so he was, again, because of his education from the University of Cambridge, number one. Second, his guide and mentor, Meghnad Saha, and his Britisher friend who was Ernest Rutherford. The reason why we have been also following it because there was limited access to any textbook. We didn't have the digital media. So when you have something easily available, when you have the Commonwealth nation and the research of almost those few dozen countries with you, it is easier just to copy, paste, and adopt and actually start the application.
Absolutely.
It took us 34 years. I remember the year 1986 when when the last policy was changed. And this year, that is the year 2020, 29th of July, the year and the day of my birthday, in fact. So it took us
Wow.
precisely 34 years for us to look back. The year I was born and the day when I celebrate my birthday. So I take a lot of pride and interest in reading the policy. I have a vested
Wow.
interest in it sometimes.
Superb.
Yes. Moving forward, you have also chosen the Tewariki curriculum framework of the government of New Zealand at your schools in Sharjah and Jumeirah. Can you please tell all our viewers something more about it?
You know what? I have always lamented the fact that India doesn't have its own early childhood curriculum. It's very important that now that the NCRT is developing it, I hope they give it a name so that it becomes a legacy for schools to recognize it, to belong to it. A few years back, when I was developing the curriculum for Podar, I studied the curriculums of 39 countries, and
Wow.
I found
Incredible.
the two curriculums to be the best in the world. Now, of course, after Australia and Singapore has revamped their curriculum, I would say there are four curriculums. But at that time, I found two curriculums the best. One was the Tewariki. I found the Tewariki good. Why? It is the whole document is in two languages. The whole document is in two languages, which means on the left hand side, it is in Maori, which is their traditional language. And on the right hand side, it is in English. So it is very, very important as a country to stay rooted and yet move forward. And that's the Tewariki curriculum. Tewariki is called Tewariki because weaving is the most important profession in New Zealand, the Aboriginal people in New Zealand. And I love one of the terms in the Tewariki curriculum. It says belonging. And I've never seen this term in any other curriculum in the world. That belonging is something that you have to teach children, and that can only happen when you belong to something. So, when we tell children to save nature, we won't have to tell them to save nature if we first taught them to belong to nature. Because when something belongs to us, you love it. You don't have to then save it. You love it. You won't destroy it. So belonging is that word which I loved in the Tewariki curriculum. Of course, they have other terms like community, relationships, etc. So I found for early years one of the best curriculums, and that's why we used it in our Sharjah and Jumeirah schools. But for India, I love the EYFS of UK. EYFS stands for Early Years Foundation Stage. And I did not like it only because it's from UK. I liked it because it's the only curriculum in the world that has a matching or an attached assessment system. No other early years curriculum in the world has an assessment system. So teachers may implement whatever they want, they may do all kinds of activities, but when it comes to assessment, they don't know what to observe and what to look for. So this is one of the best curriculums in the world, that the teacher is equipped with both the framework of teaching and learning and a framework of assessment, which is completely in sync with the teaching and learning. So it's very, very important. I hope the NCRT looks at all these curriculums, because what's the point in reinventing the wheel? We need to learn from global research and Indian, pioneers, instead of always sitting there wasting time and reinventing the wheel.
True. In fact, what you mentioned about belongingness, I think David McCland is also somewhere or the other has spoken really highly about this, about the need theory. I think every man across the globe, irrespective of his strata, irrespective of his country, irrespective of his religion, I think every man works only on three things. One is the need for power. Second is the need for achievement, and third is the need for affiliation. Nobody is working for money. Nobody is doing it for anything. I think if we start talking about David McCland and his theory right from an early age and incorporate this as a part of our curriculum, I somehow believe that I think we can definitely try to bring some significant change along with the one which you just mentioned about Tewariki and the belongingness concept from New Zealand. So yes, thank you very much
Absolutely.
about that. Moving forward, this question I'm pretty sure is going to bring a smile on your face, which is something I'm pretty confident about. You've authored these two books, one of them being Yash and Yashika, Learn About Coding, and the second being Code and Coding, Love to Code. These are actually the talk, not just the talk of the town, as I said, these are the talk of the nation, and you've been doing amazing panel discussions back and forth, and you are absolutely tireless, I must tell you. So my next question is based on your two books. The NEP recommends the induction of coding as a subject from middle school. You have written immensely on coding and screen-free coding as well. If given an opportunity, would you like to learn teaching coding? One, as a matter of fact, before we train the students, isn't it extremely important and crucial that we also equip our teachers with the right techniques of training? How can we achieve this?
It's very important, Pranay, that people understand coding. And that's why I've written these two storybooks. We think coding is about designing things on a computer. Coding at the very basic level is about your brain, is about the way you think, is about the way you react, is about the way you organize yourself. So if you see sequencing or pattern or algorithm, is nothing but putting things into the right order, making things more easy, making things more organized. And what I saw was that many parents were only thinking of putting their children in front of a screen when it came to coding. Uh, Coding, the way I look at it, helps the child understand the technology that the child is using. It's not a pencil that the child uses in the first year of life, but the child uses a mobile phone. So it is very, very important that we teach children technology literacy. This mobile phone, which is in my hand, I must know who makes it, how does it function, and 3 and 4 year olds can be taught this in a beautiful way with these coding storybooks that I have written. That, it's in our hands to control these devices. Otherwise, children are going to grow up thinking that these are magic and they can control us. So it is very, very important to understand that teachers sometimes feel, no, 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 मुझे coding नहीं आता है, मैं computer teacher नहीं हूँ. It is very important for them to understand children in your classrooms know technology more than you. Why? Because they experiment, they explore. So I feel it's very important if teachers understand the basics of coding, they will be able to understand a lot of things, not only about computers, but about how children think. So if you see the activities that I've developed in these books, you absolutely don't need a screen or an app for these books. The whole idea is that first learn concrete and then move to abstract. It's a teaching maxim that we have forgotten, but we need to come back to it, that analog coding before you go into screen coding. So these are terminologies, if then else. Now that is something that is used in coding. It's called a conditional. Parents are always using conditional, aren't they? Don't they say, if you don't eat your food, then no watching TV? That's a conditional. We ask children to put their toys into different boxes. What is that? That is sorting variables. So these, when we look at it as a coding term, it sounds so big, but it's connected to our everyday life. If we bring up children to think like coders, they will become critical thinkers, logical thinkers, analytical thinkers, and empathy thinkers. So it's very, very important to understand that teachers, of course, need to be taught about the basics of coding. And I would urge all the teachers who are listening, all the parents who are listening, it's very important for you to learn about coding, not as a skill, but as a method, as a way of thinking, as a way of thinking intelligently.
I think these pointers which you mentioned about, especially about they taking, if you do this, you will get this. If you don't do this, you will not get this. So I think this is one of the best ways for every parent who is a teacher and every teacher who is a parent. That is one of the best ways to learn, because I think they've all understood in a very sweet way what you're trying to tell them. And I think if you really want to know more about it, please write it. Go on the ECA page and just inquire how to go and buy this book. All right. So yes, that's one of the most beautiful things which I personally like. I think that's how teachers will actually learn. In your opinion, what should every school and every teacher do to make a child's first schooling a joyful experience for every learner? Reason being, these are those times of pandemic. Every time we are getting a new guideline from the central government that it's going to be a new state order, we might require to stay back at home. How can we make sure that learning and this experience of the first schooling is absolutely beautiful and memorable for a child?
I think it's very important for teachers and parents to understand the child's brain. Uh, we spend a lot of time changing nappies, worrying about children's sleeping habits, their potty habits, they are making friends or not, are they learning manners? But the very important organ in the child's brain that controls everything in the child, we know very little about that. Let me tell you a very simple thing that every teacher who teaches children for the first time should know about, and every parent who puts their child in the school for the first time should know about, is this fist. I want you all to make a fist like this, and you will see that my thumb is inside and my fingers are over it. This is your thinking brain, which is here. And it's the only difference between us and the monkeys. The monkeys don't have a thinking brain. And that's why we use the term, they are behaving like monkeys. It means the child is not thinking. And this thumb is your primitive brain, which is your emotional brain. For this brain to function, your thinking brain to function, your emotions need to be calm. Your emotions need to be in control. Then I can think. Otherwise, I flip my brain, which means my emotions become bigger and my thinking brain can't function. So when children come to school for the first time, they cry. And we are constantly worried about, nahi rone ka nahi, mat ro, mummy aayegi. We are not addressing their emotions. It's very important for us to address children's emotions when we see them upset, when we see them frustrated, when we see them angry, when we see them throwing a tantrum. It's very important to say, I know you are feeling bad. I know it is very frustrating. I know you feel like hitting somebody. So let's do this. So it's important to acknowledge their emotions. Just telling a crying child, chup ho jao, kyun ro rahe ho, kyun ro, it frustrates them. This doesn't go back in. Our job as teachers is to send this in so this can function. It's a simple thing to teach teachers. I recently took a workshop for Anganwadi and Balwadi teachers, and I called the workshop Dimag Ka Dahi. And because that's what we say, no? Okay, the bacche mera dimag ka dahi kar rahe hain. So I said that's the best way to teach them about brain development, and what are the some pointers that they should keep in mind कि कभी दिमाग का दही ना बन जाए, neither of the child and nor of yours.
Very, very well explained. I think exploratory learning is one way I think you just mentioned, and I think we should validate every single thing what they do. If we do not validate, they will question and they will get frustrated and they will be annoyed every now and then. So yes, thank you very much for explaining it so beautifully and in such simple words. Dimag ka dahi is, I think they will remember it today. So yes, there was a question which also came from one of our viewers, which says under the NEP, the Education Ministry is going to do away with all the state boards and have only one board for the entire country. Your comments on this?
I don't think that's possible, because with such a great education policy, I don't think the government or the Ministry of Education would ever restrict the educational boards in this way. We are a thriving country where parents and students have a choice of educational boards, just like you have a choice of universities. So I don't think this government or any government should take a step like that. And I don't think that's possible, because it completely takes away the vision of the policy. So I think there are these kind of rumors floating around, but I don't think that's a possibility.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much for this clarification. We have another question from our viewer, and I think I know this lady. She is pursuing her master's in emotional and mental well-being. Her name is Gayatri. She says, I would love to hear your opinion on emotional intelligence, on the training for teachers in the teachers training curriculum. How
I'm
important is
so glad.
emotional intelligence?
Yeah, I'm so glad Gayatri asked this, because it's a section which is missing in our teacher training curriculums. We never train teachers on socio-emotional learning. We straight away go into physical development, and then we move into cognitive development. Erik Erikson, who is the father of emotional development theory, not many people know about his work or the stages that he has defined. I make it a point to teach that to all our student trainees, because it's very important to understand from 0 to 1 years what does the child need emotionally. From 1 to 3 years, what does the child need emotionally? It's very, very important that if we miss out on teaching teachers about socio-emotional learning, then their focus naturally will be only on learning styles and cognitive learning, etc. So it's very, very important that there are theorists. Everybody knows Piaget. You've seen that, because Piaget talks about cognitive development. So everybody knows about him. What about Brunner? What about Kohlberg? What about Erik Erikson? Why are people not talking about them? Their theories are equally important. Kohlberg has moral development theory. When you asked about values and ethics, where are all these theories in our teacher training curriculum? So it is very, very important to understand. I'm doing a course next week on Brunner and his theory. So it is very important for teachers to know about Erik Erikson. MI became such a big name, but people are not bothered about the social and emotional development of children, and they are linked. They are absolutely linked. I wouldn't even want to talk about emotional learning as a separate subject, because your emotional learning is very much dependent on your social development. So it is very, very important. I would urge all those who are listening today, read up on Erik Erikson, and you would become a better teacher and a better parent.
Great. So I think we all should make it a point that everybody watching this, please read about Bruno, please read about Kohlberg, please read about Erik Erikson, not just follow Howard Gardner and the 8 MI theories, the MI principles on the eight intelligences. Right. So the next question is there's a viewer who says, will the NEP be implemented from the academic year 2021-22, which is this year and the next year for preschools?
So it's very important for everybody to know that education is a concurrent subject in our country, which means the state takes decisions when it comes to education. So when an NEP has been passed by the center, now every state will deliberate and come out with its own pointers on NEP, and those will be implemented in that particular state. So which means the states will now decide when they will be implementing the policy and in what manner will they be implementing the policy. Whether it will happen in 2020 in your state, I would urge you to find out from your state's education department.
Great. Thank you for this clarification. I think this answers to most of your questions, all those who had this query at the back of their minds. There's another parallel interlinked question which says some teachers are really concerned now. Will the 1 year Montessori course or 1 year teacher training private course be valid for foundation years? What do they do?
If there is only one thing that I feel the policy is lacking in, is the definition of a teacher training program for the foundational years. It has been a lacuna in our country. We have the B.Ed, which is for grade 1 onwards, but we didn't have any course which is pan-India identified as for early years. And now, of course, with early years and the first 2 years of primary clubbed together as foundational years, the NEP should have defined a teacher training program, like a B.Ed, which would become mandatory for all foundational years teachers. I hope this is now done by the state governments when they are coming out with their own NEP documents.
Excellent. Thank you very much for this clarification as well, Doc. There's another similar question. I think this person has definitely not read the policy. But the question is, which department will preschools come under?
I don't blame this person. I'll tell you why. Do you know that presently preschools come under nobody? We are
No.
under no department. Women and
True.
Child Development says, no, you are not under us. Education Department says, no, you are not under us. Private preschools, not many people know, come under the Shops and Establishment Act. So which means if shops are open, why are preschools not open? But then the government comes into preschools to put you down, to stop your online classes and all that. So, and then these are the same governments who take a decision on the age. If you notice today or yesterday, an article came that in Delhi, the age of entry has been relaxed by 1 month.
Yeah.
And the government has taken the decision. And it is for private schools, but private schools come under nobody. When you want them for something, then you are under nobody. So now, according to the new NEP, all preschools, Anganwadis, etc., are going to come under 4 ministries. It's going to be divided into 4 ministries. So it's Women and Child Welfare, you will have your Tribal Ministry, you will have your MOE. So it's going to be taking a lot of organization for each state to understand exactly where will the private preschools fall.
But one thing I think we should assure everybody who is watching it today that it took us 34 years to come to Lyon. And I think we should also give the policy some time, because even if a baby takes 9 months to take its shape. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
true. So
I
let's
think we are
let's
too much in
let's
a hurry to start implementing things. Let us first savor the policy. Let us understand it. Give enough time to the state governments to come out with their own policy roadmap. And I'm sure when it's ready for implementation, the state governments will inform.
true, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot to change, to make this change, because it cannot just happen overnight. Just that one document is rolled,
Absolutely.
and we just, because trust me, the moment it is done as well, the change will not be accepted with utmost grace.
Yes.
Yes. So my next question to you, which is absolutely dear to your heart once again, which is about Gijubai Badeka, Muchalima. Please share your perspective on Gijubai Badeka's work, which is relevant in today's time, and also that one thing which you have penned in Once Upon a Story, which is going to be a takeaway for all our viewers today.
I think if you have read Once Upon a Story, there is this poem that Gijubai Badeka wrote called This Will Not Happen in Our School. And I think that should become the roadmap, the vision for all schools in this country, private or government. It gives very nice 13 points about what should happen in a school and what should not happen in a school. Gijubai Badeka was all about child-centered education. And that's exactly what the national education policy is all about. It's about making the education system child-centric. And that's what Gijubai spoke about, that everything should be done from the child's point of view, not from a parent's point of view or from a syllabus point of view. It has to be from the point of view of children. Uh, all of you who have not read his work, Divaswapna, you must read it. It was his experiment in education and it worked brilliantly. Sad that this country forgot all about him and kind of turned a blind eye to all that hard work that he put in. If we had listened to this man in 1920 or in 1940, we would have been a different nation. It's not too late even now. His work, his teachings are very much in line with the new education policy. And for all of you who want to do a great job with the new national education policy, Muchali Ma or Gijubai Badeka, his Divaswapna, and Once Upon a Story, which I co-authored with Vinita, actually helps you understand not only what he stood for, but how to implement it in today's modern classroom. So it is very, very important that one thing, if I have to take away from my book, our book, it would be uh, this should not happen in our school. That poster, those pointers are very, very important.
True, true. I think that's a beautiful thing which you shared with all our participants today. You are the president of the Early Child Association of India. You are the president of the Association for Primary Education and Research, and you have a beautiful team of over 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, and the numbers are increasing every single day. You are present across every single city in the country, almost 40 plus territories, and we are very proud members of it. I take it with utmost pride. So, to become a member of the ECA, is there something which you would like to tell everybody? This is a noble cause. It's again, it's an honorary thing. However, if it comes directly from the horse's mouth, from the lady herself, from the soul of ECA, from the soul of the Early Childhood Association of India, can we please hear something about ECA and your work so far and the journey so far?
10th April, we are turning 10. So ECA is going to become 10 years old. And it is because of people like you, Pranay, you, Lucky, Aditya, all these people all over the country. I mentioned the men, of course, because it's so difficult to get men to participate in early childhood education. And let me tell the viewers that ECA is a non-profit. And the people who work for ECA are all big shots. They are all big shots, having their own businesses. They are all leading in their own companies. But yet they take out this free time to do work for Early Childhood Association. I think this is the one of its kind model in the world where it is the people who have their own businesses, they are CEOs, they are all doing well in their own sectors and are yet doing work for ECA like normal, ordinary people and not charging a single penny or earning any profit from ECA. And I think that is what makes ECA so respected in the education community, that we are not about money, we are more about work. And we are very proud that during the COVID time, we have done some impactful work, which is available on our website. And we have promised ourselves that we will stand by every preschool owner, every parent, every Anganwadi Sevika, and every child anywhere in this country so that learning does not stop because of the pandemic. So please go on our website and please become a member today because yes, we charge for a membership if you want to become a member. But please understand where all that is going. Just before your event, we had this award ceremony for these volunteers who did this ECE for all children, which is our campaign on Facebook and YouTube, where we are running sessions for children in 9 languages. So there are sessions ongoing on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, for all those Anganwadi, Balwadi children who don't have access to learning right now. And it's available in 9 regional languages. This is the kind of powerful work that is possible because of all of you. So please join us. If you want to join our committees, please join us. We need more and more people. We need more Pranays. We need more Luckys. We need more Harshas. We need more Belas.
Thank you so much. And I think after listening to you today, a lot of men will also show interest in joining you in the cause and joining ECA as a whole. I think we are at the end of the session. I'll just take 2 or 3 more minutes, but usually it should not be at a very serious note. So usually whenever somebody is inviting you, it's usually a policy level discussion or a discussion which is too much of academic in nature or a discussion which is too much of literature. So on a lighter note, this is more like a rapid fire with Dr. Watts. So you have only one word to answer, preferably. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and you have to be very honest. And just you could speak your heart out. You could take. In fact, I've just said one word, but the forum is yours. It's absolutely yours. So who is your role model?
Actually, I have had no role models. I have not one, I have many. So answering in one word would be difficult, but I've had Mahatma Gandhi has been my biggest role model because at a time when there was no social media, for him to reach out his message all over the world, and a message which was so contrary to what the world believed in, which is non-violence. So I always feel whenever I find something, this is not possible, I think it's possible if you think that you want to do it. So I would say yes, Mahatma Gandhi.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think he is the father of the nation, and I think he's not just a role model to you, but a role model to a million others. So who inspires you, and what inspires you rather, to wake up every single day, dress up, show up to work, do dozens of discussions every single day, dozens of talks every single day? I think you must have crossed at least 5 centuries of panel discussions in this entire pandemic. So what really inspires you? Yes, what really inspires you?
A smile of a child. I always think only of them. And I get a lot of Facebook posts every day from my centers where I see their smiling faces, their happy faces. On our ECA Facebook page, we see of all the work that we are doing. And truly, I tell this to everybody. It doesn't have to be your own child. If you are feeling down, if you are feeling defeated, just go and spend some time with children and you will see how you suddenly become rejuvenated and your life's innocence which you had lost comes back. So it's always children and their smiling faces.
Superb, superb, superb. So I think we should just keep smiling at you.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yes. Given a chance, what advice would you give to yourself, the same 21-year-old Swati who has just graduated from university?
I would tell her not to be in a duvida about what profession to get into, because there was a time when I was thinking about becoming a lawyer. I did my law also, and I was so passionate about being a teacher. So there was this, kashmakash. What should I do? But I think I made the right choice, and I think I should be making this choice every time I have to make this choice.
So we like the Kashmakash here. Yes. So what is that one thing that you miss being an educator?
I didn't get your question.
What is that one thing that you miss being an educator?
I don't.
Okay.
There's nothing.
Excellent. Excellent. So I think we are talking to a pure soul of education now. So if not an educator, what would you have chosen to be?
I actually can't think of being anything else, because I think whether you are teaching or not, education is something that is in your blood. And if God forbid I was thrown out of the education system, then I
It
would
will
go
never
into the
happen.
law.
It will never happen.
Then if I'm thrown out, then I would go into law. But otherwise, education is where I belong.
Super, super. And one last question to you, perhaps the second last question. I'll be greedy over here with my questions because I love listening to you personally. Uh,
I love
we, are of, we are often pressed by the feeling of thanatophobia, the fear of death and the dying process of ourselves and our loved ones. Life is really uncertain in these unprecedented times. What are those three things that you wish to change or start the change per se before you say goodbye to the world?
So, number one, I would like to not bring up our children, especially our girls, with the goal of getting married and having children. You know, we hammer this into the head of girls that shadi karna hai, ab sasural mein kaise karegi and all that. You know, it's not necessary to be tied down to these social bondages, because I've seen so many women stuck in marriages where they are unhappy, they and their children become unhappy then. So I think we need to move out from making our girls believe that marriage and children is important. Number two, if I could change, I would add a ministry to this government. There should be a ministry for early childhood education. And number three, every city should have a children's commissioner like UK has. London has a position. You know, we have a frivolous position in our cities called mayor. I mean, what does a mayor do? Sorry, maaf karo mayor, but I think that position can be turned into children's commissioner. I think as a society, even now, we are not thinking of our children. If all of us start thinking about preschool children and reopening preschools, other businesses will reopen. But we are going around it the wrong way. We are thinking of other businesses first, and then unko kholenge, फिर preschool kholenge. To open preschools, we will need so much of safety that other businesses will also become safe. So I think we
Absolutely.
need to start thinking children first. Those are the changes that I would like to bring.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. And my final question for you for the day is, if you were the education minister of our country, what is that one thing that you would like to do?
First of all, I wouldn't like to be the education minister. Make me the early childhood minister. So that's a change.
So
And
yes,
what would I like?
you are the early childhood minister, otherwise as well, because everybody listens to you dearly.
That's very sweet. But I don't know when if that will ever happen. But if I were the early childhood education minister, I would make parent education mandatory. It's not fair that we allow parents to become parents without any education. To drive a car, you need a license. You know, it's very, very important that parents should be educated, not only about birthing, because I've seen these birth classes that parents go to, and then they stop taking interest. Birth ho gaya, and then sab kuch gaya, you know. No, it should be an education about understanding the different stages of a child's development so that they are prepared for it. They should know what to expect when your child will be in the first 5 years. They should know what to expect when the child will go into middle childhood, into adolescence, so that they are not struggling and trial and error is not used so much. So that would be one of the first things you can expect from me if I become an early childhood education minister.
Certainly. And I think you are doing a phenomenal job, otherwise, also, in spite of not being an early childhood minister as well. So, yes, thank you very much for being so frank. Thank you so much, dear General Dr. Swati Popat Vats, for being overall generous and so frank with your answers and to the rapid fire as well. We are sincerely
Absolutely.
grateful to you for your time and for addressing so much on the NEP, and most importantly, giving us a reassurance that this is for sure one of the most promising action documents of the 21st century led by the BJP government. And we are also hopeful that once this policy is executed, we can say to the rest of the world that we are coming. Yes, so
Absolutely.
yes,
I must congratulate our present day government for coming out with this beautiful policy. I'm telling you. And I must congratulate you, Pranay. Your questions were brilliant. And I really enjoyed this interview. In a long time, I haven't enjoyed a session as much as I've enjoyed this session today.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
to
In
you.
fact, thank you so much for making everybody travel through the works of Brunner, to the works of Goldberg, to the works of Erickson, to the works of Vygotsky, to the works of Montessori, to the works of Rabindranath Tagore, to the works of Mahatma Gandhi, to the works of Anutaiwag, and so many other legends. And yes, without mentioning him, this talk cannot be over. That is Gejubai Badeka, who is very dear to your heart. So yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you so much, Dr. Swati Popat Vats. And it's a pleasure to always have you with us. And in fact, we'll be delighted once things get normal. We also invite you in person in Pune and also have a session conducted by you exclusively for all the education cell members. Having said that, I'll also take a few seconds to mention that we are a newly formed, first of its kind in Maharashtra under the Bhartiya Janata Party, an education cell under the jurisdiction of the BJP Pune City President, Mr. Jagdish Mulukji. The BJP education cell primarily focuses on education and the well-being of educators. If you wish to be a member of the BJP education cell, please feel free to write to us via social media, either on our Facebook pages, Instagram pages, Twitter handles, and have a conversation with us. We will let you know everything about it. There is no membership fee to it, and neither there are any remunerations to any positions that we hold. This is absolutely honorary and pro bono in nature and voluntary with regards to your time. Only prerequisite is that you should be an educator or actively involved in the field of education, directly or indirectly. And yes, you should be a resident of Pune Municipal Corporation only. I would once again thank Dr. Swati Popat Vats for her valuable insights and all our viewers on behalf of my entire core team member of the BJP Education Cell. And no session is complete without the collective effort of each and every single team member of ours. Ms. Seema Tawar, BJP Cell Education President, Ms. Rachel Agarwal, GS, Ms. Kajal Chadija, Ms. Manju Kaira Gupta, Dr. Ilham Sheikh, Dr. Mr. Rupesh Sancheti. My sincere gratitude to Ms. Gayatri Chadwa and Ms. Romal Surana. Thank you so much, Ms. Roma Kamat, Ms. Nadia Sheikh, Ms. Monica Bojkar, Ms. Ishita Ghoshal, Ms. Maitri Zoshi, Ms. Anjali Zalke, Ms. Shweta Pankaj, Mr. Vajnath Biradar, Mr. Vajnath Biradar, sorry, Ms. Meda Hirve, and last but not the least, Ms. Shireen Bastani. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Swati Popat Vats, and see you all next week with yet another intriguing session by the BJP Education Cell, Pune. Thank you and namaskar.
Thank you.